So hello and welcome back to the class, and today's video is about decoding emotional messages. And it's a it's a big topic, and it's a useful topic to have some kind of process behind, because it's not always apparent where we pick up emotions from, or if our emotional reactions are even, like, particularly in that instance, authentic. Because, like, we get upset, and when you get upset, you tend to, like, people, not just me or you, we tend to go to extremes with the emotion, or it takes us in a different direction than where our authentic centered alignment would be, right? So being able to have some idea of how to go a little bit deeper into what you might be experiencing and why is, part and parcel of being some kind of thriving and activated empath. And this isn't about going down the rabbit hole of, the mystery of why you feel a certain way or have a particular pattern. Because those kinds of healings tend to have, like, a lifelong, a very long-lived solution or healing process behind them. And it's never just like, well, I got through that fight, or I made a decision and now it's over. Sometimes things can't be that easy, but I do feel that, like, a lot of timing in your life and in your patterns, and even cosmically and on your natal chart, a lot of things have to line up for those big moments to just kind of happen, where you're just like, bam, it's done, decision made, lifelong pattern changed. So this is something to, like, perhaps at first just tread a little lightly on, and then allow your curiosity to guide you as to where you might be able to start really making shifts happen in your life, if you're even there with it. And you'll kind of know when something is ready to shift, because you'll be getting new ideas about how else it could be. You'll be becoming more interested in how else you can live life, what other experiences you can have, what other choices you can make, other than the ones that you've already experienced. And it's kind of how you know when something is ready to shift all on its own. But as an empath, you get a lot of emotions from a lot of different places, and some of them are yours and some of them aren't yours. And we've talked about this in other videos, so certainly refer back to some of this if you need to. With doing the egg retort and getting that sense of what's authentic to your core self versus what is coming from an external place, somebody else, a situation, the news, the cosmos, whatever it is. Could be a lot of different things. It could even be the past. It might not even be something your mom said today. It could be something she said 10 years ago that still lingers in your brain. But you've picked it up and you've spent the last 10 years trying to figure that shit out. It's just the way it is. And it's, I don't think it doesn't happen to every other person on this planet. I think just because of the way our abilities are hardwired in us, it is a natural propensity for us to want to explore that and to hold on to that so we can learn from it. But we don't necessarily live in a world where emotional intelligence and sensitivity has been highlighted, and there aren't a lot of really mainstream ways, belief, support techniques that to cater to more empathic people. And there's still a lot of conditioning that experiencing too many emotions, or too many of one emotion or another emotion, is bad, or it means something about you that needs to be fixed. And we tend to take that on, that sense of, I must be wrong, or there's me crying again, like, can't help it, please forgive me because I'm crying again. When none of that ever needs to happen. None of that level of judgment has anything to do with anything. It's just garbage thoughts out in the universe. And the deeper you go with the work of being able to tell what's authentically yours versus not yours, just somebody's opinion, just something they happened to say because they were annoyed that day, the more you realize just how much garbage thought there is out in the world. But it also helps you focus in on what it is that's very important that you do say and that you do act upon. And because emotions are energy, and energy can be translated as emotion, so working with emotions is also working with your energy, with the energy you're putting out into the universe, and even, building a solid, emotional, and energetically beautiful kind of foundation for your home life as it's possible. Because it doesn't mean you have, a 25-room mansion is going to be more energetically beautiful and emotionally supportive than a one-room apartment, that you have when you're just starting off in life. Or, that you choose to live because, tiny homes are easy to maintain. Whatever it is that you're making the choices for is what you need to make beautiful to you, for your future, whatever that looks like. So, this wrongness, well, we need to drop a lot of that judgment shit. You're experiencing something because you are experiencing something. You're perceiving something and it is causing a reaction. Period. End of statement. Like, that is as far as it ever needs to be taken. Looking at my notes here real quick. And the other kind of caveat point here I have with this emotional message kind of topic is, even you're not doing this to be at this place where you never have any kind of emotional experience again. Life would get pretty damn boring if all you ever felt was peaceful and serene and like nothing ever changed. Like, we're not here, we didn't sign up for that. That is not what this world is about. Period. End of sentence. Yes, we can be a little bit more serene and peaceful within ourselves and within our choices and how we go about living our life, so that we're not always fighting against the world around us, that we find our way through it and our own source of emotional validation and support through it. But don't believe everything you see in the yoga magazines, or that you might see in other types of teachers out there on the internet where, they had this wonderful experience with a shaman and now all of life is perfect and they're making money, and a lot of it is lies. Some of it's lies, some of it's spiritual bypassing, and some of it is just a very well-crafted story to illustrate one particular point and then excludes a lot of other points that could be made along the way here. So it might not all be the truth. So the point isn't to eliminate feelings. And this is where I kind of have like this fundamental disagreement with Buddhism, that like we have to, or we should be here to transcend our body experience and to purify ourselves from that kind of physical life. I mean, if we signed up here for yet one more ride on this crazy thing we call life, we kind of have to be part of it. And we have to be able to find our way through life and not just skim the edges because we're afraid of being hurt, or we're afraid of being judged, or it seems messy, or it seems scary. Because as people who are here to bring magic, to bring higher level energies, to bring healing energies to this world, we have to get into the world. We have to be part of this physical experience here. And I am not a psychologist, so of course, take this with that grain of salt. And if you do feel like you need therapy, or maybe this is a little bit more than what you're experiencing, is a little bit more than what I'm talking about here, feel no shame. Our family's used all sorts of professional services like that throughout our very long lives here already. And, you know, it's there. It's there because our society is growing in its ability to begin to understand why sensitivity is important, why emotions are important. You know, going back to my grandparents' generation, they didn't have anything like that. They didn't have, like, of course they had psychology, but it wasn't to the point where it was necessarily affirmative of life and people's ability to function with whatever beliefs or whatever little quirks that they do have. So we're really coming into this new age, and us being in this place where we can accept and work with our emotions openly without having to hide it from others is like a huge thing. A huge thing for our generation and the generations who are younger than us. Food for thought there. But here's a very, very light framework in which to help you kind of like work through where you might have gotten that emotion from. So, and there's going to be like a little booklet kind of worksheety thing that goes with this. So you have something to work on, and you know, you can see the structure as well as hear it as we're kind of talking about this. So when we're talking about decoding your emotions, we're not talking about decoding necessarily your immediate, your reactive emotions. So let's just use like a fight as an example here. You had a fight with your spouse. And the one thing or the couple things you might actually remember about the fight might not be the things that the fight was actually about. Because you're probably going to remember the things that were more emotionally harmful, more emotionally charged, than what is actually base objectivity true about the situation, even about what that other person said. Because especially as an empath, sometimes you hear somebody say something, but you hear their intent behind it, and so you think they said what? You know, you think they said different words than what they might have. That's almost like an emotional dyslexia thing, where like your empathy is happening faster than your comprehension of what that person actually spoke. You read their energy faster than you heard their words, and and that can get you into trouble. It can, because if you're like, yeah, but you hated me. Well, in that moment, they might have really been projecting a strong hate, or a strong hate toward this situation, or a hate that they even had to have this conversation with you. You read that hate, but you didn't hear the words of like, can we talk about this later? Because I don't want to have this fight in front of my kid. Or, you know, whatever the words might have been. So there's that level of it, of actually coming down to what was said versus what we felt. Because that's important. Because not everybody's trying to pick a fight with you just because they feel something. Or they're having a momentary experience of frustration and anger when they're around you. And we can really begin to personalize that stuff, right? Oh, that person felt angry, I must have done something. It's the logical conclusion that our brain makes, but our brain is only doing what our brain was built to do. Look for solutions, look for correlations. But when we're not in touch with soul, and when we're not in touch with our intuitive abilities and our intuitive flows, when like the rest of us isn't engaged in the process, we're not getting the whole story. And brain can't make all the correct assumptions. So you have this fight. This is like, I'm going on tangents, but you have this fight. So the things you remember aren't necessarily the things that caused the fight. So I want you to like try and go back. What was the root? We're not talking about like the root when you were 10. We're just talking about like, what was that very first feeling you had when the fight started? It might have been like, you might not even be aware enough right now to say it wasn't anything but anger. I'm mad because he said this. You know, be very straightforward with yourself with this as you're writing in the workbook. I'm mad because he said this. But what is the this? And not necessarily his words. Like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to have a beer and I'm going to cool off. I'm leaving. And so you're mad that he left. Sure, right? This is a funny example of me, but okay. But what about that leaving made you get angry? Is it an abandonment thing? Is it, what did you feel like you were going to lose in that moment? Because anger often has to do with loss or perceiving that there's a threat, that you're going to lose something, whether it's pride or ego or your spouse, because people always leave, like you have this belief that people always leave you, or maybe you're feeling violated in a way where they're putting something on you, either like a title or a label or some kind of stereotype that isn't true. So feel into that. Like, where is the attack? Where is the violation? Or where is the sense of impending loss? Like, what was that in that one situation? And as it kind of dawns on you that, like, oh, like, I really hate it that he can't have a fight and then he can't express his emotions. All right. Well, then you have to see whether that emotion is yours or his. And if it's somebody else's thing, you can't necessarily do anything about that. Not even if it's your spouse. And we've talked about this in the video where we talked about the base empathy, about how we like to control things. Empaths, empathic intuitives, empaths. We like to try and help people and fix things. But sometimes, you know, really coming down and being able to decode these messages just comes to the point where we have to ask ourselves, are we validating this person's emotion? Not necessarily validating it as something real or something real they have to be worried about, but validating that they're having that experience. So that once we can name that experience, we can see it in them and how it plays out in them. And then we have a better sense of where we are with it. Because then we've learned it's not us. So look at the root. What did you think was happening? Attack, violation, in the example of anger, or loss, or threat of loss. And is that really what that person was doing? And because we have to validate that too. And then, is this a them thing, or is this a me thing, or is this an us thing together? Because just like those 4 questions are going to clear up a lot of things. They're going to really give you the message that's trying to come through. Why were you upset he left? Is it because now everything is up to you and you didn't want it to be? Well, see, now there's an interesting thing. And once you get to the point where you can be that direct then you can actually begin decoding the message. Because that's not decoding the message. That first part, those 4 questions, that just gets you to the point of acknowledging what emotions happened, what emotions you were perceiving and reacting with and against, and the back and forth of it. The decoding takes place once you're able to name it, and name it something useful. And not just, I was mad, because that's not useful. That's not useful information. It's like saying, that's a dog. But really, the Kennel Club wanted to know what breed and where her papers were. So the actual decoding then comes into play where we were able to say, like, I'm mad because now I feel like I have to take care of the whole house by myself, and I don't know when he's going to be back, and now it's all up to me again. Right? So, what's that feeling? Well, that's like resentment, and that's all these other things, and we can go down the rabbit hole, and we can get into really naming some of those things. But the decoding happens is when you can kind of flip the script, because your emotions in that moment are telling you what you don't want. You don't want him to leave. Or leave under those circumstances, at least. So what is it you do want? What is it, not like his behavior-wise. I'm not talking about him, we're talking about you, because we're decoding your messages. He has to decode his messages. I mean, you can kind of do it together if you do come to the point where you can be emotionally open and transparent with each other, but you have to go with what you can do, and you can do your stuff. What is it that you want? You want somebody who's more like a partner. Maybe that's that feeling. Maybe that's that deep desire, and why you felt hurt, and why you felt loss. So then once you realize you realize, wow, we really failed at partnering there. Then you can begin to work toward fulfilling the message. You can work toward figuring out how to fix the partnering stuff, instead of just being angry or just always feeling hurt. Now granted, this scenario presumes that the spouse is willing to work with you emotionally. Because if they're not willing to work with you, if they're not willing to compromise or to talk or to maybe even go to couples therapy in this situation, in this example, there isn't much you can do. You're going to be hobbled. Your hands are going to be tied behind your back because you can't do the emotional work of partnering by yourself. Because that is intrinsically something that has to happen with 2 or more people. And you cannot fix it all by yourself. No matter how good you are. No matter how much energy and free time you have. Alright, but that's a whole other lesson, life lesson in and of itself, right? But do you see how that decoding worked? Once you're able to recognize the feeling, how can you flip the script? What is it that I do want? And from there, there's no real way for me to provide a good framework because all of these emotions are going to be so very personal. But do keep in mind, bypassing versus healing. So when we spiritually bypass our emotions, it's when we kind of bury them again, or when we deny they're happening, or when we impulsively react against them so that maybe we'll scare them away. So we lash out because we realize our partnering sucked in that moment, that one moment. Or oh, it's okay, he'll come back, and he'll bring flowers and everything will be okay again, even though like you never fixed or addressed your partnering issues, or just denying it happened outright, or that wasn't a real fight, you should see a real fight, like the cops weren't called, like that. Those are like huge problems, and we are bypassing our problems by not then trying to find some kind of solution, or healing, or forgiveness, or whatever the problem needs. If we never address it, we can't do anything about it. When healing is living with and acting responsibly when you have some sort of problem. So I'm having partnering issues. What can I do to mitigate that? What can I do to get us some help and support? And that we'll both agree to. And it doesn't have to be ideal. And don't jump to these ideal solutions, because sometimes, especially when we're dealing with spouses or people who are more averagely sensing than an intuitive empath, their emotional needs and wants in those moments aren't going to be as necessarily complicated as we perceive the situation to be, because we see all the things around it. It's just part of the ability. And that they can work out kind of on their own over time with just a little bit of support. And I'm not saying that our stuff can't be is always hard then, because it doesn't have to be. But I think we do fixate on what we feel quite often. And that fixation tends to kind of like rabbit hole us into, oh, I felt this very small nudge of something. What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? Well, not all thoughts mean anything at all. We have like a million, a trillion thoughts a day, something like that. Just random things that pop into our head. And even if we have them 4 or 5 times in a day, it doesn't really mean anything about us or about them. It's just a thought. And maybe it's nudging us toward making some kind of preparation for our future. Like, oh, I'll get the car fixed, or oh, I have to get my will signed, or oh, like, maybe they're just like little bits of general guidance that come through. And maybe a little bit of record keeping along those lines might be useful, because it'll help keep it on top of your mind so you actually do something about it. But messages, emotions, these little energetic nudges, they're asking for these little things, these little adjustments that we can make over time. Now, when you seem to be experiencing something universal like cosmic, like it's a retrograde. Everybody loves to talk about retrogrades and eclipse seasons and all that. That's when a lot of people can experience similar themes and patterns to the things that just come up in their lives. And none of it necessarily means it has to be like this deep personal thing. Now, some eclipses and retrogrades are going to hit a lot more personally, a lot more deeply transformative, a lot more healing than others will. So, don't think there's something wrong with you if it doesn't hit you that way. Or that there is something wrong with you because it hit you that way. It just means that that's what needed to come up in that space. This is the energy you have to work with during this particular time period. But that doesn't mean it has to completely sink you, and it doesn't mean you have to stop and wait necessarily. It just means this is the energy you have to work with. How can you work with this? And then there is victimhood versus survivorhood. Are you staying stuck in victimhood, or are you stuck in perpetually moving forward. I mean, there's pros and cons, and to me the balance is always kind of in the middle, because being in victimhood helps us recognize what's happening, what happened around us, the patterns that are happening, and the cost of those things. It's a great, it's a space of really good awareness. But then survivorhood is always asking us, how can we do more? How can we grow more? How can we evolve? How can we move past this? And too far into survivorhood, and you can be completely bypassing a lot of things that you do need to handle. So there's always this balance of going forward and looking backward. Like, you have to manage on your own, because we really just need to be present in this present moment. And that doesn't require some kind of 10-year deep examination into every little thing that happened since we were 10. And it doesn't require us to have the 99-year plan in a planner with everything all laid out, and this is how it has to be, because we're only moving forward. And tomorrow we're going to deal with how I lost my grandpa, and we're going to get over that tomorrow. And it doesn't work that way either. So use both of those ends of that spectrum to kind of balance where you need to be right now, so that you are for the most part, happy, content, functional person. Because that's all the point is that we can live in this beautiful present moment with our energy as clear as we can get it nowish, and enjoy the road along with it. Alright, any questions, any situations you want me to look at, put it in the community and we'll talk about it.